Imagine a battlefield in the heart of West Africa, the air heavy with smoke, the ground trembling beneath the march of warriors, and in the front line, not men, but fierce women, armed with machetes, spears, muskets, and an unshakable resolve to fight to the death. These were the Dahomey Amazons, a military force unlike anything the world had ever seen, women trained from girlhood to kill without hesitation, women who transformed the small kingdom of Dahomey into one of the most feared states in Africa, and women whose wars left behind both awe and terror in equal measure. The Dahomey Amazons, known in their own language as the Mino, meaning our mothers, were not a myth, not a legend exaggerated by European imagination, but a flesh and blood army of women, numbering in their thousands, who fought with more ferocity than many male soldiers of their age, and their wars, spanning centuries, tell a story of blood, ambition, resistance, and an eternal struggle for survival in a brutal world of shifting alliances, colonial hunger, and relentless rivalries. To understand their wars, we must step into the 17th and 18th centuries, when the Kingdom of Dahomey, located in present-day Benin, was rising to power. Built around the city of Dahomey, Dahomey was a landlocked kingdom that faced constant threats from neighboring states such as Oyo, Alada, and the Yoruba city-states. Yet under the leadership of powerful kings, Dahomey found a weapon no other African kingdom had dared to wield so fully: an all-female army. The story begins with King Huegbaja, who in the 1600s is said to have formed a regiment of women hunters to guard his palace. Women who proved their bravery in hunting dangerous animals and defending the royal household. But it was under his successors, especially King Agaja in the early 1700s, that these women were transformed from palace guards into frontline warriors. And from then on, the Mino became the spearhead of Dahomey's wars of expansion. Their wars were brutal, fought not just for land but for captives, because captives meant power, captives meant slaves, and slaves meant wealth. In a world where European ships crowded the West African coast, hungry for human cargo, the Dahomey kings waged wars year after year, sending the Amazons at the front lines, raiding enemy villages, burning towns to ash, and dragging thousands into chains. The Mino did not simply accompany the men, they often led the charges, their war cries echoing louder than drums, their machetes shining in the firelight as they stormed enemy walls. What made the Amazons so terrifying in war was not just their numbers, but their discipline. Training began in girlhood, where they were taken from families and sworn into a life of celibacy, loyalty, and absolute obedience to the king. They learned to climb thorny walls, endure pain without flinching, and slit the throats of prisoners without hesitation. To hesitate in battle was death, both from the enemy and from their own commanders. So when they marched as one body, one mind, one unstoppable force, and enemies whispered that facing the Mino was like facing death itself. One of the early wars that established the Amazons' reputation was the campaign against Alada in the 1720s. King Agaja wanted to break the power of Alada, a rival kingdom on the coast, and he unleashed the Amazons in the assault. The women stormed fortified towns, cutting through defenders with ruthless efficiency, and when Alada fell, the message spread across the region. Dahomey had a secret weapon, a weapon that no male army could easily withstand. But wars in West Africa were never straightforward. Power was a shifting balance, and for all their victories, the Dahomey Amazons soon met their greatest rival, the mighty Oyo Empire. Oyo was a Yoruba superpower, with cavalry unmatched in the region. And when Dahomey clashed with Oyo in the mid-1700s, the Mino faced something they could not easily overcome: the thunder of horse hooves, waves of cavalry charging across open plains, slashing through Dahomey ranks. These wars forced Dahomey into vassalage for decades, paying tribute to Oyo. Yet even then, the Amazons never disappeared. They remained the iron shield of their kingdom, waiting for the day when Dahomey could rise again. The 19th century brought that chance, when King Gezo ascended the throne in 1818. He rebuilt Dahomey's power, defying Oyo, strengthening trade with Europeans, and most of all, expanding the ranks of the Amazons. Under Gezo, the Mino grew to thousands strong. Some accounts say between 4,000 and 6,000. An entire standing army of women who trained daily, who marched in drills with muskets imported from Europe, and who went to war year after year to supply captives for the slave trade, Gezo famously said, "The Amazons are my power. They are the sword and shield of Dahomey." And indeed, under his reign, they fought in nearly every campaign. One of the bloodiest of these wars came in the 1820s and 1830s, when Dahomey waged campaigns against the Yoruba towns of Egbado and Abeokuta. The Amazons led the assaults, capturing villages, burning shrines, and dragging thousands back in chains. Yet when they faced the city of Abeokuta itself, a fortified Yoruba stronghold, filled with Egba warriors and later missionaries who armed them with European weapons, the Amazons met fierce resistance in 1851 and again in 1864. The women marched with fire and fury against Abeokuta, but both times they were repelled, suffering enormous losses. These defeats did not destroy their legend. However, they only deepened the aura of fear around them, for who else but women would dare return again and again to a city that had already bled them dry? What shocked European observers was not only the fact that these women fought like men, but that they often fought harder. European traders and missionaries who witnessed them wrote in awe and horror, describing the Amazons as the most terrifying women in the world. They told of how captives were executed by Amazon hands, how they beheaded enemies and carried skulls as trophies, how they sang war songs about never marrying, never bearing children. For their only husband was the king and their only child was war itself. When the French arrived in the late 19th century, hungry to add Dahomey to their colonial empire, they too faced the wrath of the Amazons. In the First Franco-Dahomean War of 1890, the Amazons led the attacks against French columns, ambushing them in forests, charging with machetes against rifles and artillery, and though outgunned, they inflicted shocking casualties. French soldiers wrote home about facing women who fought with savage valor, who would rather die than surrender. In the Second Franco-Dahomean War of 1892, the final clash came. The Amazons fought to the very end, charging into bullets, refusing retreat, and dying in heaps upon the battlefield, their blood soaking into the red earth of Dahomey, their screams echoing across history. By the end of that war, Dahomey was conquered, the kingdom annexed into French West Africa, and the Amazons as a military force were disbanded. Yet their legend did not die even decades later. French officers would speak of them with a mix of respect and fear and oral traditions. In Benin, still remember them as mothers, warriors and martyrs of a vanished kingdom. The wars of the Dahomey Amazons were wars of ambition, survival, and defiance. They were wars fought with fire and machete, with muskets and blood, wars that fed the horrors of the slave trade, yet also carved out a place in history for women as warriors of unmatched courage. Today, their memory inspires artists, historians, and storytellers, and their legacy echoes in popular culture, from films to novels. Yet beyond fiction lies the undeniable truth that once in the heart of Africa, an army of women rose, fought, and died, leaving behind a history too powerful to be forgotten.